Good evening, dear friends. Margaret here, and tonight I have a story that arrived in my inbox from a woman named Sarah Blackwell, 52 years old, living on a ranch outside of Missoula, Montana. She wrote to me saying, "Something happened to me that I can't explain, and I need to tell someone before the memories fade. I need this stranger's sacrifice to mean something." Sarah's letter is about an impossible encounter, a rescue that defies logic, and a man who vanished without a trace. A story that asks the question, what do we owe to people who save our lives, and what does it mean when we can never repay them? So settle in, friends. Tonight, we're traveling to the mountains of Montana, where a woman was saved by a stranger, and that stranger's disappearance became the greatest mystery of her life. Dear Margaret, my name is Sarah Blackwell, and I'm writing this on a snowy February evening in 2024, sitting by the fireplace in my ranch house in western Montana. Outside, the mountains are dark against a darker sky. The snow is falling the way it does in February, heavy, relentless, indifferent to human plans. I'm writing because I need to understand what happened to me on February 18th, 2024. I need someone outside my life to hear this story and help me make sense of it, or help me accept that it might never make sense. I've lived in rural Montana for most of my life. I was born and raised here. My parents owned a ranch about 30 miles from the nearest town. When they retired, they moved to Arizona, but I couldn't leave. Montana is in my blood. The mountains, the wide open spaces, the fierce independence of the people here. It's who I am. I'm a wildlife photographer. That's my profession, my passion, my entire life. I wake up at dawn. I spend my days tracking animals through difficult terrain, capturing images that tell stories about the natural world. I've won awards. My photos have been published in National Geographic, in conservation magazines, in coffee table books. I travel to remote locations, Glacier National Park, the Bob Marshall Wilderness, the high country where few people venture. But I also have a routine. I know the land around my ranch intimately. I know the weather patterns, the animal migrations, the safe routes, and the dangerous ones. I'm careful. I'm experienced. I'm not reckless, or at least I wasn't until February 18th. That morning, I woke up to snow. Not unusual for February in Montana, but this was heavier than predicted. My weather app said we'd get 6 to 8 inches. What actually came was closer to 14 inches of wet, heavy snow, the kind that accumulates quickly and makes driving treacherous. I'd been tracking a mountain lion, a big male, maybe 150 pounds, for weeks. I had photos, but I wanted to capture him in action, hunting, being his authentic self in his natural habitat. I had a lead that morning. Hikers the day before had reported seeing him near Copper Creek, about 5 miles from my property. I should have waited for the weather to clear. I should have stayed home. Every sensible part of my brain was telling me not to go. But I'm 52 years old, and I've spent a lot of my life making my own decisions, taking my own risks. I'm alone most of the time, never married, no kids, no one to answer to. That freedom is wonderful, but it also means I sometimes take risks I shouldn't take because there's no one to stop me. I packed my gear: camera, telephoto lens, spare batteries, warm clothes, emergency supplies. I told myself I'd just hike to Copper Creek, scout for tracks, come back before the weather got worse. 3 hours, maximum. I left the house at 8:30 a.m. The snow was beautiful. It covered everything in white, softening the sharp edges of the landscape. My boots crunched in the fresh powder. I could see my breath, a small cloud dissipating in the cold air. The world felt clean and quiet and mine. I found lion tracks within an hour, fresh, probably made within the last few hours before the new snow started. I followed them, photographing, checking my camera's GPS to mark locations. I was engaged, focused, lost in the work. I lost track of time. When I finally checked my watch, it was 12:47 p.m. I'd been out for 4 hours, not 3. And I looked up to realize that the visibility had dropped dramatically. I could see maybe 30 feet in any direction before the snow thickened into whiteness. I looked at my GPS. I was about 2 miles from my property, in a ravine I recognized but didn't normally frequent. Getting back should be straightforward. Head downhill, follow the creek. I'd be home in 30 minutes. But when I started walking downhill, I realized the snow had disguised the terrain. What looked flat was actually a steep slope. What looked like solid ground was actually a snow-covered ravine. I took a step, and suddenly I was sliding. I tried to stop myself, dug in my heels, grabbed for trees, but I was on snow over ice and gravity was winning. I slid down, my camera banging against my ribs, snow getting into my mouth and nose. I tried to curl into a ball to protect myself, and then I hit something hard and everything went black. When I came to, I was lying in snow and my leg was screaming. I was conscious enough to understand that something was very wrong. My left leg was bent at an angle legs shouldn't bend. I'd broken it, I was certain. Compound fracture, probably. The pain was like nothing I'd experienced before. I was also alone, in the middle of a whiteout, miles from civilization, with a broken leg and no way to call for help. Cell service in rural Montana is sporadic at best, non-existent in canyons like the one I was in. I tried to stay calm, to think through what I needed to do, assess the injury, apply first aid, get to a place where I could signal for help, call someone when I had signal. But the pain was disorienting, and when I tried to move my leg, I nearly passed out from the agony. I was still lying there, trying to breathe through the pain, when I heard a voice. "Don't move. You're hurt." I looked up. Through the snow, I could barely see him. A man, tall, wearing what looked like old winter gear, a heavy coat that had seen better days, worn gloves, a knit cap. He was coming toward me through the snow. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, small. "Someone passing through." He knelt beside me, assessing my leg with experienced eyes. "You broke it, probably tibia and fibula. We need to get you out of this canyon." "I called 911. I lied. "Help is coming." "No, you didn't," he said matter-of-factly. "No signal here, but we need to move anyway. This ravine floods when snow melts, and the temperature is dropping. You need medical attention." He was right. I could feel the temperature dropping, could feel the wind increasing. The snow was starting to have that particular quality that meant a blizzard was coming. "My leg, I know. This is going to hurt." He pulled off his heavy coat. It was lined with thick fleece, and it was ancient, the kind of jacket you buy at a thrift store and keep for decades. He carefully splinted my leg with branches and the jacket, then tore strips from his thermal shirt to bind it. Every touch sent lightning bolts of pain through my body, but I didn't yell. I was too shocked, too confused. "Can you stand?" he asked. "I don't think—" "Try." I tried. With his help, I managed to get upright, all my weight on my right leg. My left leg was completely useless. "I'm going to carry you," the man said. "Don't argue." Before I could protest, he had me up and over his shoulder like I weighed nothing. I was 140 pounds of woman and camera gear, and he was carrying me like I was a child. He started hiking up the side of the ravine, uphill, struggling through snow that was getting deeper and wetter. "Your coat," I said. "You gave me your coat. You're going to freeze." "Not the first time," he said. There was something in his voice, acceptance, familiarity with hardship. "Where are we going?" "There's an old ranger station about a mile from here, abandoned, but it still has walls and a roof. We can wait the storm out there. I'll figure out how to get you help after it passes." I wanted to ask how he knew about the ranger station, how he was wandering through the Montana wilderness in a February snowstorm, how he happened to be exactly where I fell. But I was slipping in and out of shock, and the pain was overwhelming, and I couldn't find the words. We made agonizing progress through the snow. The man was strong but struggling, his breathing hard, his pace slowing. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, he found the ranger station, an old wooden structure, weathered gray, half buried in snow. The door was locked, but he broke a window and let us inside. It was barely warmer than being outside, but it was shelter. He laid me down on an old table, checked my leg again, covered me with what he could find. Emergency blankets, old sleeping bags, fabric scraps. "I'm going to get water and supplies," he said. "Will you be okay? Don't leave me." I grabbed his arm. The pain and shock had made me desperate. "I won't be far, and I'll leave you my whistle. If you need me, blow it." He was gone for maybe 20 minutes. When he came back, he had snow, which he melted in an old pot he'd found. He gave me water. He found some freeze-dried camping food and made me eat it, though I wanted to refuse. "You're going into shock," he said. "You need to keep up your strength." "I'm cold." "I know. This is the best I can do." He built a fire in the old stove, small and controlled, but enough to take the edge off the cold. And then he sat with me through the night, monitoring me, making sure I stayed conscious and warm, talking to me about nothing important while the blizzard raged outside. "What's your name?" I asked him at one point. "Michael," he said. "Michael Hayes. I'm Sarah Blackwell." "I know," he said. "I've seen your work, your wildlife photography, the lion photos in that magazine. They were beautiful." I was shocked. "You've seen my work?" "I read a lot. I have a lot of time to read." But he didn't explain what that meant, where he read, what his life was like, why he was in the middle of the Montana wilderness during a blizzard. By morning, the storm had passed, the snow had stopped, and the world outside was pristine and terrible and beautiful. But my leg was throbbing, and I knew I needed medical attention quickly. When daylight came, Michael insisted on going for help. "I'm going to hike down to the main road," he said. "Find a ranger. Get them to send someone with a stretcher. You stay here, keep warm, help is coming." "Don't leave me alone," I said again. The fear of being abandoned in that ranger station with a broken leg was worse than the pain. "I have to," Michael said, not unkindly. "You need a hospital. This isn't something I can fix with emergency medicine. You're going to get sepsis if that leg isn't properly set. You could lose it. I won't let that happen." He covered me carefully, made sure I had water and food within reach, gave me his whistle again. He was preparing to leave when I realized something. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "You don't know me. You risked your life getting me here." Michael looked at me for a long moment. "Because someone helped me once, when I had no reason to expect help, when I thought I was going to die. Someone saved me." He looked away. "I've spent my whole life trying to pay that debt by helping others. It's all I know how to do." "What happened to you? Why are you living in the wilderness?" "That's a long story, and it's not important right now. What's important is that you get medical attention. I'll be back with help within a few hours." And then he was gone. I waited. I told myself he'd be back soon, that help was coming, that my nightmare would be over. But hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Shadows moved across the floor of the ranger station, and no help came. I started to worry. Had he gotten lost? Had he had an accident? Was he strong enough to make it down the mountain on his own? He'd looked exhausted, worn down from carrying me and staying awake all night. By evening, I was convinced something had happened to him. I blew the whistle repeatedly, the emergency whistle he'd left me, but there was no response. Around midnight, I heard a vehicle engine. Through the broken window, I could see headlights. Rescue had come. A ranger, an ambulance, people with supplies and expertise. They found me in the ranger station, delirious from pain and exhaustion and fear. "There was a man," I told them. "He helped me. His name is Michael Hayes. He went for help. You need to find him." The rescue coordinator, a woman named Linda, wrote down his name. "We'll look for him," she promised. "Right now, we need to get you to the hospital." They got me down the mountain carefully, painfully. I was taken to St. Patrick Hospital in Missoula, where they confirmed I had a compound fracture of my tibia and fibula. I needed emergency surgery. I spent the next week in the hospital, then 2 months in physical therapy. During that time, I asked about Michael repeatedly. I wanted to thank him properly. I wanted to understand his story. I wanted to know who he was and why he'd risked his life for a stranger. But the search turned up nothing. The Ranger Service couldn't find any record of a man named Michael Hayes living in or passing through the area. They searched the hiking trails. They put out information to local law enforcement. Nothing. "Are you sure that was his name?" Linda asked me. "Yes," I said. "He was clear about it. Michael Hayes. He knew about my photography. He'd seen my work published. We'll keep looking," she said. "But Sarah, it's possible he was confused about his name, or that you misheard. People in shock sometimes misremember details. I knew I wasn't confused. I knew what I'd heard. But as weeks passed and Michael never materialized, I began to doubt my own memories. Had I been more delirious than I thought? Had the pain and shock distorted what I remembered? Was it possible that Michael, if he was even real, had had reasons not to come forward to rescue services? My sister came from California to help me recover. She listened to my story with sympathy but skepticism. "Have you considered that the person who found you might have been afraid of the authorities for some reason?" she asked gently. "Maybe he was wanted for something. Maybe he couldn't come forward without risking himself. But why would he help me then?" She didn't have an answer. By spring, I'd stopped asking about Michael. I focused on physical therapy, on rebuilding my strength, on learning to walk again without pain. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. In June 2024, I decided to find Michael myself. I started by looking him up online. Michael Hayes, Montana. There were hundreds of results. I contacted everyone I could find. Michael Hayes in Billings, Michael Hayes in Great Falls, Michael Hayes in Bozeman. None of them were my Michael. I hired a private investigator. She searched for records, employment, housing, criminal history, anything that might lead to a Michael Hayes who could have been in the Montana wilderness in February 2024. She found nothing. "It's like he doesn't exist," my investigator said. "There's no financial trail, no documented history. It's as if this person lives completely off the grid," which I supposed made sense. A man living in the wilderness probably wouldn't have a permanent address or employment history or regular documentation. But I wasn't ready to give up. I started reaching out to homeless services in Montana. I contacted shelters, soup kitchens, churches that served transient populations. I posted on social media groups dedicated to Montana hiking and wilderness living. I described Michael: tall, strong, worn clothes, kind eyes, maybe in his 60s. For months, I got no responses. Then, in August, someone reached out. A man named Robert Torres, who worked at a transitional housing program in Missoula, wrote, "I think I might know who you're looking for. There was a man who came through our program in December 2023. He left after a few days, said it wasn't for him. His name was Michael, but I don't remember his last name. He was quiet, educated. He talked about living in the wilderness. He said he'd chosen that life. Does that sound like him?" It did. I drove to Missoula and met with Robert. He showed me old files from December. There it was. Michael Hayes, listed as a temporary client who'd stayed from December 15, 2023. He'd claimed to have no permanent residence, to be living rough in the mountains. His intake form was sparse. He'd refused to provide much personal information. "Do you have any idea where he was from originally?" I asked Robert. "Not really. He didn't want to talk about his past. He was pleasant enough, but he had this quality of someone who'd made peace with loss, you know? Like he'd already grieved whatever he'd lost and moved on." I looked at the photocopy of his intake form. There was a photo, black and white, probably from a camera phone, of a tall man with weathered features. It was him. It was definitely him. But it didn't help me find him. The form was filled out in February 2023, almost a year before I met him in the ravine. "Did he ever come back?" I asked. "After December?" "Not that I know of." Over the following months, I became obsessed. I hiked the area where I'd fallen, looking for any sign of him. I set up a small camp near the ranger station, photographing the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. I offered a reward, no questions asked, for information about Michael Hayes. Nothing. By October 2024, I'd spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours. My physical recovery was complete, but I was emotionally exhausted. I'd been through 18 months of looking for a man who didn't seem to exist, who'd saved my life, and then vanished completely. My sister came back for a visit and found me in a dark place. "Sarah, you have to let this go," she said. "This man is gone. Maybe he died. Maybe he moved to another state. Maybe he was exactly what he seemed, someone living in the wilderness who helped you and then moved on. But I never got to thank him properly," I said. "I never got to repay him." "Maybe that's the point," she said. "Maybe he didn't want anything in return. Maybe he was just doing what he thought was right." In December 2024, almost a year after my accident, I received an email from an unexpected source. It was from a Dr. Catherine Morrison at the University of Montana. She wrote, "Dear Ms. Blackwell, I'm writing because I read about your search for Michael Hayes in a news article about your accident and recovery. I believe I may have known the person you're looking for. I'm a social worker specializing in homeless populations, and I conducted an intake interview with a man named Michael Hayes in December 2023 at our transitional housing program. The description matches your account. I'm writing to ask if you'd be willing to meet with me. I have information about this man that I think you deserve to know, but it needs to be discussed in person. Please call me." She included her number. I called her that day. We met at a coffee shop in Missoula the following week. Dr. Morrison was a woman in her late 60s, kind-looking, with the demeanor of someone used to hearing difficult stories. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said. "I've been thinking about Michael for over a year. Your story, it confirms some things I've suspected." "What do you mean?" I asked. In December 2023, Michael came to our program in a state of decompensation. He'd been living rough for years, and his health was failing. He was malnourished. He had respiratory issues. He had various untreated medical conditions. I was worried he was going to die if he didn't get help. What happened? He stayed for 5 days. During that time, we worked on getting him to a doctor to accept some of the services we offered. He was resistant, but cooperative. On the evening of December 19th, he left. He said he felt better, that he wanted to get back to his life in the mountains. Did you know where he went? No. He refused to tell us. He just said he had something he needed to do, that he had one more thing left to accomplish before. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Before he was ready to be done. Ready to be done with what? With life, I think. Sarah, I believe Michael was suicidal. Or rather, he was living with the knowledge that his body was failing, and he was letting it fail. He was living in the wilderness without adequate shelter or nutrition or medical care. It was a slow form of self-harm. I felt something shift in my chest, but he helped me. In February, he risked his life for me. I know, and I think that's what changed for him. I think he found a reason to matter again. I told Dr. Morrison the whole story of the ravine, the broken leg, how Michael had carried me, had stayed with me, had gone for help. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, I don't know if this makes sense, but I think what happened is this. Michael spent years believing his life was meaningless. He'd failed at everything. His career, his relationships, whatever brought him to the streets. And he decided his best course of action was to let himself die quietly, alone, in the wilderness. But then you fell. And for the first time in years, Michael had a purpose. He had someone who needed him, someone he could save. And he did save you. Do you think he's still alive? I asked. Dr. Morrison looked away. I don't think so. When I tracked down records after reading your news article, I found something. A death certificate. Michael Hayes, date of death, February 19th, 2024. Found in a ravine near Copper Creek, Montana. Cause of death, exposure, and pneumonia. The room went very still. He died the day after he saved you, I said. Yes, and Sarah, I think that might have been intentional. I think saving you gave him one last moment of meaning, and then he was ready to let go. I couldn't finish the sentence. He left behind some things. They were found with his body, a journal, some photographs, letters. The authorities contacted the Transitional Housing Program because we were the last place that had any record of him. I reviewed the journal before they disposed of his belongings. What did it say? Dr. Morrison pulled a worn leather journal from her bag. This is a copy. The original is with the county, but I made notes of the important entries. The last entry is dated February 19th, 2024. He wrote, I helped someone today. For the first time in so long, I did something that mattered. She has a life ahead of her, and I made sure she would get to live it. That's enough. That's more than enough. I can let go now. I can be done. Tears were streaming down my face. He killed himself after saving me. I think he was already dying, Dr. Morrison said gently. His body was failing, but yes, I think he consciously chose to stop fighting after he knew you would be okay, after he knew he'd made a difference. Why didn't anyone find his body sooner? Why didn't they identify him? He was in a ravine, hidden by brush and snow. He probably died during the night after he left you at the ranger station. His body wasn't found until spring, when the snow melted. By then, he'd been exposed to the elements for months. The identification was based on fingerprints and dental records. A man living on the streets with no family to claim him just becomes another unclaimed death. Dr. Morrison gave me copies of Michael's journal entries. I've read them so many times the pages are worn. The entries document decades of a man struggling to survive, to find meaning, to matter to someone. Michael had been an engineer once. He'd been married. He'd had children who didn't want contact with him anymore. He'd lost everything to a combination of poor choices, mental health struggles, and bad luck. For 20 years, he lived on the streets and in the wilderness. And in all that time, he never stopped trying to help others. The journal is filled with stories, people he'd helped, strangers he'd given money or food to, times he'd intervened when he saw someone in trouble. I don't know if my life has meaning, one entry from 2019 reads, but maybe I can give my life meaning by using it to help others. Maybe that's all any of us can do. The final entries document February 2024. Michael had been hiking through the mountains. Just wandering, he wrote, looking for a place where he could rest. He encountered me, and he made a choice. I found someone who needed me, the final entry reads. I was able to save her. She will have a life because I was in the right place at the right time. I won't spend my life wondering if I mattered. I will know. She will live because of me. That's enough. So here's what I've come to believe about Michael Hayes. He was a broken man who'd lost everything that society says makes life meaningful. Career, family, status, wealth. By conventional measures, his life was a failure. But in his final act, he proved that none of that matters. What matters is whether you matter to someone, whether your presence in someone's life made a difference. Michael saved my life. He carried me through the snow with a broken body. He stayed up all night keeping me warm and alive. He went for help knowing he might die doing it, and he did die. The next day, in that same wilderness, Michael Hayes expired, alone, unmourned by those who'd known him before his fall, but not unmourned by me. I don't know what I would have done if he hadn't found me that day. I probably would have died in that ravine. If not immediately, then from exposure, from shock, from the cold. My sister wouldn't have me. My friends wouldn't have me. The world wouldn't have me. But Michael Hayes decided I was worth saving, and he gave his life, literally his last day on earth, to make sure I would survive. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to understand why someone in that position would choose to help a stranger, why a man with nothing left would give even that, how love and compassion survive in a broken system that tells you you're worthless. I think about what Dr. Morrison said, that Michael was suicidal, that he was letting himself die. And I think about how one act of mattering, one moment of being needed, one rescue changed his final day from despair to purpose. I've changed my life since February 2024. I still photograph wildlife, but now I also volunteer. I work with homeless services in Montana. I use my platform, the small one I have through my photography, to advocate for better mental health services, better housing, better systems, to support people who've fallen through the cracks. Because Michael proved something. People who are invisible, who are homeless, who are struggling, they're not worthless. They have gifts to give. They have love to offer. They have the capacity to save lives. Michael saved mine. And in saving it, he might have saved himself, given himself one final moment of peace, knowing he'd mattered. I'm writing to you, Margaret, because I want people to know Michael's name. I want them to know he existed. I want them to understand that homelessness isn't a moral failing. It's a human tragedy, that people on the streets are still people, that they have stories, that they can matter deeply even if society pretends they don't. Michael Hayes was a man. He lived, he struggled, he loved, and in the end, he was a hero. He deserves to be remembered. With deep gratitude and love, Sarah Blackwell Missoula, Montana. Margaret sets down the final pages, her hands trembling. That was Sarah's story. That was Michael Hayes, a man who saved a stranger's life and then disappeared from the world so completely that he was almost forgotten. But he's not forgotten. Sarah made sure of that. And now, through her story, through this reading, Michael's name and his sacrifice ripple outward into the world. Friends, I ask you tonight, how many Michael Hayeses are there? How many people struggling, suffering, invisible? How many of them could change the world if we just let them? If we saw them? If we believed they mattered? Michael didn't need salvation programs or government assistance or even recognition. He just needed to know he mattered. And in that final moment, in saving Sarah's life, he finally got to know that. That's not a tragedy. That's a gift. That's a life that mattered. So when you see someone homeless on the street, remember Michael. Remember what he was capable of. Remember that invisible people are still people, still worthy of dignity, still capable of love and heroism and grace. Michael Hayes, if you're listening from wherever you are, thank you. Thank you for being exactly where Sarah needed you. Thank you for mattering. And Sarah, thank you for remembering him, for making sure the world knows his name. Good night, dear friends. Remember Michael. Remember that everyone matters. Until next time. Margaret sets down the final pages and takes a breath. She removes her reading glasses and speaks directly to the camera, her voice soft but steady. Before we end tonight's story, I want to share something Sarah sent me just last week. An epilogue to Michael's story. A continuation written 1 year after Dr. Morrison revealed the truth about who Michael really was. Sarah asked me to read this final piece. She said it was important for people to understand that stories don't end. They ripple forward. That the people we save don't disappear. That meaning continues to grow from a single act of compassion. So here is what Sarah wrote. 1 year later. Dear Margaret, it's February 19th, 2025. Exactly 1 year since Michael died. I'm sitting on the porch of my ranch, looking at the mountains where he saved my life. The snow is lighter this year, melting faster. Spring is coming early. Life continues, indifferent to the loss of one broken man. But the world is different because of Michael. After Dr. Morrison told me the truth, after I read his journal and understood what he'd done, I made a promise to myself. I would make sure his death meant something, not just to me, but to everyone. Last month, I established the Michael Hayes Memorial Fund. It provides grants to homeless services across Montana, mental health support, job training, housing assistance. The goal is to help people like Michael find their way back before they decide they're done fighting. I've raised $127,000 so far. Every dollar comes from people who heard Michael's story and wanted to help. I've also created a scholarship for students studying social work, specifically focused on homeless populations. The first recipient is a young woman named Jessica Martinez. She emailed me to say, Michael Hayes was invisible to the world, but his story made me see the invisible people around me. I want to spend my life helping them. Thank you for making sure Michael's sacrifice means something. 2 weeks ago, I organized a memorial service in Missoula. I invited everyone who'd known Michael, everyone who'd been touched by his story. We didn't expect many people. Michael had been alone for so long. 200 people showed up. There were Dr. Morrison and the staff from the Transitional Housing Program. There were homeless advocates and social workers and volunteers. There were people who'd been homeless themselves and found their way to stable lives. There were people from the community who'd simply heard Michael's story and wanted to honor him. And there were my family and friends. My sister flew in from California. My best friend drove up from Bozeman. We stood together in that cold February air and we told Michael's story, not as a tragedy, but as a testament to human resilience and the power of one act of kindness. Michael Hayes, I said, standing in front of all those people, you believed your life was meaningless. You believed you were invisible. You believed that nothing you did mattered. But you were wrong. Your life mattered. Your presence in this world mattered. And the day you saved me, you proved that one person, even broken and struggling, can change the trajectory of another person's entire future. I'm alive because of you. My family has me because of you. And everyone here has been inspired to do better, to see better, to love better, because your story reminds us what really matters. You mattered, Michael. You matter now. And you will matter for every person helped by the fund in your name, for every student trained because of your sacrifice, for every person who hears your story and decides to treat a homeless person with dignity. You saved my life on February 18th, 2024, but you've saved so many more lives since then, through the impact of your story, through the meaning your death has given to so many people's purpose. Thank you, Michael. I hope, wherever you are, you know. I hope you finally understand. You mattered. You always mattered. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. After the service, people came up to me and shared their own stories. Someone whose brother had been homeless and died on the streets. Someone who'd struggled with suicidality and been saved by a stranger and never got to say thank you. Someone who'd decided to volunteer because they didn't want another Michael to die alone. One man, probably in his 70s, told me, I was homeless for 15 years. I thought I was invisible. I thought my life was a waste. Reading Michael's story, it changed how I see myself. I matter. Even when society says I don't, I matter. Thank you for reminding me. I cried. I couldn't help it. The truth is, Margaret, I don't think Michael is truly gone. His body is gone, but his impact continues to grow. Every person helped by his fund. Every social worker inspired by his story. Every homeless person treated with dignity because someone remembered Michael's name. That's immortality. That's legacy. That's what it means to matter. I've been thinking a lot about what Dr. Morrison said, that Michael was suicidal, that he'd given up on his life, and I've been thinking about how one act of saving someone else's life changed his final day from despair to purpose. What if there are thousands of Michaels out there? What if there are homeless people, struggling people, invisible people? What if they all just need one moment of mattering? One moment where they save someone else. One moment where they're needed. I can't save all of them, but I can try to create a world where more people see them, where more people treat them with dignity, where more people ask, what if this person has something beautiful to give? The Michael Hayes Memorial Fund isn't just about helping homeless people. It's about helping all of us remember that everyone has value, everyone has gifts, everyone can save a life, even if it's just by treating someone with kindness on their worst day. Michael is gone. The pain of his loss, the knowledge that he died so soon after saving me, that never goes away. But it's been transformed into something beautiful. It's been transformed into a force for good. I think Michael would understand that. I think he'd be at peace knowing that his death wasn't meaningless, that his sacrifice is still saving lives. So on this anniversary of his death, I want to say it again, so that it ripples out into the world. Michael Hayes mattered. He was a hero. He was a human being worthy of love and respect and remembrance, and I am forever grateful to him for giving me my life back. With love and hope, Sarah. Margaret sets down the letter and looks directly at the camera, her eyes bright with emotion. That's Sarah's epilogue. That's how Michael Hayes continues to live, not in the mountains of Montana, but in the hearts of everyone his story touches. Friends, I've been reading stories for 15 years, stories of loss and mystery, of resilience and survival. But Michael's story, it reminds me of something fundamental. We all have the power to matter. We all have the capacity to save someone. Maybe you won't save someone's life physically, as Michael did, but you can save someone's sense of self-worth. You can save someone's belief that they matter. You can save someone's hope, and that might be the greatest salvation of all. To Sarah, thank you for making sure Michael is remembered. Thank you for transforming tragedy into purpose. And to Michael, wherever you are, you were right. You were ready. You let go, knowing you'd mattered. And you continue to matter with every life your story touches. Good night, dear friends. Remember Michael Hayes, and remember that everyone deserves to know they matter. Until next time.